I want to welcome everyone. If you're here for the informational session regarding the paving of Skunk Hollow set to come up in July, you have landed in the right place. My name's John Abbott. I'm the town administrator, and I'm joined here this evening by Tyler Billingsley, who is our town engineer in all things road and civil engineering and structure, and glad to have Tyler here to help create context and answer questions. Unfortunately, the planned third part of our triumvirate, our road foreman, Adam McGee, is unable to be here tonight. He got called to kid care duty. His mom, who was supposed to do the kids, was sick and is unable to make it. But I think between Tyler and I, we can hopefully answer any questions and have people leave with the answers they were hoping to get. So I thought what I would do is just create a little context for paving projects as they occur. Again, this is relatively new to me. This is only my second construction season in my position, and one of the reasons I felt like it would be important to have an informational session is we did a project last summer up on Silly Hill Road. I think the scope and some of the planned outcomes for the project kind of caught neighbors off guard. I don't think they really understood what rebuilding the road was going to entail. And in the spirit of not feeling like surprises are being imparted on residents, I thought we'd try to give some information on the front end so people know what they can expect. Looks like, I'm guessing most of you live here in Jericho for a number of years. So we typically have, and depends on the season, and Tyler, feel free to jump in. Last year we had a couple of different projects going on. We had a road construction project. The paving was primarily took place on Griswold Lane and that neighborhood. So we typically have a bigger paving project. This year's being Skunk Hollow. And for folks who are unfamiliar with how these paving projects are financed, they tend to be a share between the town's general fund and then funds that are provided to the town based on a calculation of total road length within a given municipality. So it's a shared expense. And the good news this year, again, in terms of process, the way it typically works is Tyler and Adam will put together a request for proposals. That request for proposals went out earlier in the spring. Paving companies either will or won't respond depending on where they are and how lucrative they believe that the job will be. And how many responses did we get this year? I think it was 4. I believe. Yeah. So we had 4 companies that bid on the project, and by way of municipal decision making, we're beholden to work with the lowest bidder. So none of the bidding parties know what they're submitting or what each the other is submitting. We find that out on the final day, and Tyler sees what we have, reports back, lets the winning bid and the contractor who placed it know. This year was I think unique, right? In that the winning bid came significantly under the total allocation we had for paving, and Tyler was able to negotiate a little bit more paving than we'd originally planned, which was great. The funds that we get, we typically want to commit and use. Yeah, so that's the background. Once the contractors, contracts are signed, it's really a matter of scheduling a time window. And I think the time window to start
July 1st to August 18th. So we try to miss the bus schedule. I don't think it'll be that long. We try to give them a window so that they can fit it in with their other projects, and you typically get some better pricing if you don't force them to do it, this week or that week. So I think it'll be, probably more like, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks of kind of call it heavy construction, and potentially a week or two of, cleanup, guardrails, shoulders, kind of the restoration portion of the project, where you'll still see folks out there line striping, the kind of stuff that kind of tails the end of the project.
So is this more than just paving, or how are they digging down? They're gonna have to scrape?
Yeah.
Good question. So it starts, just to give people a reference, it starts not quite at 117. There's kind of a failed
Yeah, let
section
me-
of road.
Tyler, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Let me do this. I wanted to get to that part. I thought what I would do first. Why don't we create some context and share of the totality of the affected area, so people know where we're talking about as a reference point, and then we can talk a little bit more about the specifics. Actually, let me go to this. And so can folks at home see that okay?
Yeah.
So this is a, yeah, I have to apologize. Everything comes across really dark.
Should I knock a light off here?
That might help, but yeah, there you go. That actually does help. Thank you for that. And so, yeah, if you look in this lower corner, so heading south to north, so this is the Route 117 in red where the cursor is. That's the turn up the road. Here's White Oak, Tyler Place. So the plan is to go all the way north. And again, I don't know which they tend to work downhill, I would imagine, right?
I don't think
Doesn't much matter.
No, they'll work one lane at a time. But it starts a few hundred feet off of Route 117. There's the brook kind of kisses against the road right along 117, and that's a bigger project than we had funds for to repair. So we started, rather than paving a section we knew was going to kind of fail and settle some more in a year or two, we started just above that. So I think it's house number 259 is where we start. And then it travels, like John said, the whole way up to about house 100, which is 7,500 feet, more or less. And it's a mixture of things. It's not just paving. There's a couple culverts that are going to be replaced that looked not great, and I figured this is a good time to do it. A few sections of guardrail that are also not great. Figured it's a good time to do it. Around the traffic calming islands, I'm not sure if they just weren't constructed particularly well to begin with, or the base wasn't great. There's gonna be more of a full depth reclamation there, meaning instead of just grinding a little bit on the surface and paving right over top of it, it's kind of more of like a full 12 inches of really grind it, regrade it, and then put a much thicker coat of pavement on top of that, kind of fresh ground, rolled and graded sub base there. Then there's line striping, there's some tree work, there's a couple dead I think they're elms at the top that need to be cut back. So it's primarily paving, but there are a handful of things like culverts and shoulders and kind of associated road work along with that pavement.
I'm wondering around those islands, one's right outside. I live at 139, so it's just outside of our house. And one thing I noticed there and is that if you're a pedestrian or if you're on a bicycle and you go in the area of the island, those areas, in my thinking, should be much wider to provide some space for someone on the side of the road. At least the other main part of the road where you don't have those speed islands, a car might have the wherewithal to cross over the yellow line and give you some space, but there they don't because of the curbing next to the island.
The granite
So you're sort of between a moving vehicle and the ditch. So I don't know if that's built into this project, but
That is not built in. We are tightening up the lanes a little bit and doing like call it a double wide fog line, the white line on the outside, not the double yellow center, but a double white fog line. So you'll get a little narrower driving lane, which should kind of hug cars in more, and you'll get that kind of really big, bold fog line to try to delineate that space from vehicle to runner, biker, whatever you might have.
okay.
I got a big,
I got a
Mhm.
question.
making lanes narrow, that's gonna be really difficult for me, driving a 25-foot rig. And in that particular area, when you're talking about the island, I'm not sure if I'm hearing you correctly, but if you raise like the size of that island, I can foresee rigs like mine plus farm equipment. We're wide.
Mhm.
And sometimes we need to have a piece of equipment up on that island. So if the island section is raised higher than the road, that equipment is either gonna get broken or, it's just not gonna be good, because there's not gonna be any way for a larger vehicle to smoothly access that extra space. You know what I mean? So-
Yeah, so maybe I should clarify what I said. So the grade won't change. It's proposed within an inch or two. From what the pavement is now to what it will be when the project's completed. And the lanes will be striped narrow, but in terms of overall pavement width, it'll be the same. And in addition to the actual paved width, there's gonna be a minimum 1 foot of, they call it wrap, a recycled asphalt product, which kind of looks and feels like pavement. It's black, it kind of binds together, but it'll be a built up shoulder to kind of butt up and help reinforce that edge of pavement. So you don't get the kind of edge cracking you see a lot now, which I think someone mentioned earlier. So you'll have the same pavement width plus another foot of that kind of reinforced shoulder at a minimum. Before you got into any, side slopes, embankments, ditches, that kind of thing. So if any, it won't be narrower, most cases it'll be wider.
And I don't know if there's any consideration for additional signage for bikers and pedestrians to say that, there isn't a lot of space in this section of road, and maybe to, take it quicker because the roadside, and that's great, but we've gotta have a road to share.
Right.
And that section, there is no road to share.
It's a tough section. I mean, a lot of that is very windy and kind of benched into a hillside that the road was probably there, 150 years ago when it was no vehicles and, the road being 15 feet wide was plenty wide. So now it's kind of widened out on this benched in section next to the brook and next to a ledge slope. So it'd be very tough to really get, a 24 or 28 foot wide road through most of that,
Right.
I think. So I think most of it is at least 22, if not 24 right now. I didn't measure all of it, which is kind of a standard minimum width for a road like Skunk Hollow.
Thank you.
The other, correct me if I'm wrong, the island itself, where there's currently gravel, that's gonna be a hard surface too, correct?
Correct. So Adam, the road foreman, mentioned it was kind of vegetation and plantings in there, and it had to be mowed and maintained. And the only way that they could get to it to mow it and maintain it was to pull up next to it, unload a mower, mow it, which I think a sheriff stopped at one point and said, this is not a state thing. And Adam said, well, we can't not maintain it. So part of this is we're going to skim off the topsoil and vegetation and put down a hardened surface. So if you do go up and over it with a vehicle, instead of sinking into the grass or the mud, it should be, it's not paved, but more of like a gravel or rock surface that you could.
It's angled going up, so it's not like squared off.
I believe that we're not going to change the angle of what they're at now. I think they're all granite curbing at roughly a 45, if I'm not mistaken, 45 degrees going up. So we're not going to be changing the granite curbing or, the angle that it's set at. It'll be round down next to it and repaved against that angled surface. So to your point, if you did have to take a corner tight, if you took it at 45 miles an hour, that'd be pretty rough and probably break something. If you were to go slow, it should be able to ride up onto that now hardened surface back on the other side, kind of like you see at roundabouts, like in Jacksonville, where tractor trailers aren't making the full roundabout, they're cutting over that kind of sloped corner, and as long as they're going slow enough, it bumps but doesn't break.
Yeah.
So similar idea to that, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. The vegetation is not gonna be left there because it hasn't been maintained, and that actually creates a safety hazard for coming back from my mailbox.
Visibility wise.
Oh, you can't see cars.
Yeah,
coming
I
up
think
it, so
Adam, as soon as the sheriff stopped and got involved, I think it was, they kind
stop
of
mowing it.
forced to stop mowing it, but that will go away, yeah.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, I have a question about culverts online here, Ron. Can you hear
Sure.
me?
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah, down at the
Go
base of Skunk Hall, base of White Oak Drive, that's where I live.
Yep.
It's one of the culverts there. I saw in the engineering documentation that when they put that in, they've got to check with the engineer about placement. But there's about
Yep.
a 5-foot drop off there. If you don't make the corner exactly right, leaving White Oak, I mean, you drop your tires off the edge of the pavement. I don't know if
Uh-huh.
that's planned to be adjusted so you can actually make a good corner there. I know. Yeah, go ahead.
That's a good question. We're adjusting that culvert a little bit further downhill, which should help you out a little bit. And we're also kind of rotating the alignment. Right now, it kind of goes straight across, like perpendicular to Skunk Hollow, and it dives off a pretty good embankment there where it's starting to erode away at the road edge. So we're actually going to rotate to angle it down. There's a little bit more of a bench and stable area, maybe, I don't know, maybe 10 feet downhill from where the current discharge is. So
Right, and
it'll
that's into the stream, right? But not at the White Oak end. So you're going to pivot it from White Oak, but that's where the hazard is. You know, the culvert that goes under White Oak Drive and then connects with the culvert that goes under Skunk.
Sure.
It's not a nice, you have to make a 90 right out of there. Otherwise your tires drop off the edge. And if And I know, I think the town trucks have gone off there already. I saw double wide, double rim marks that went right down, 4 or 5 feet down into the culvert and back up again. So
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll take a look at that, and if we can make some, slide it downhill and kind of pad out your shoulder a little bit more and make it more of a easy sweep, certainly definitely do it. That's an easy thing
that's exactly it. Check it out. You'll see try and make the turn yourself in your car and you'll see what's going on. You have to avoid the uphill traffic, and it's hard to do that and make the corner.
Sure, we'll move it as best we can to make it a little, it might not be perfect because that is a pretty steep, your road coming into Skunk Hollow is pretty steep, but I think we can definitely make it better, just not perfect. But yeah, we'll slide it around to make it as good as we can.
Maybe some guardrails.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. Check it out. Appreciate it.
Yep, no problem.
Any other questions out there? I don't see other hands up.
Yes, I have a question.
Oh, here we go.
I live at 156 and the transition between Skunk Hollow and my driveway is really bad. The side of the asphalt is crumbling and 2 big holes that are impossible to keep filled are in my driveway. And I am hoping that this paving job is going to include an apron connecting my drive and the road. Otherwise, I will have to do it and pay for it, and I didn't cause the problem.
Yes, each driveway or access, whatever it may be, has basically a bumped out paved apron, and then when they come through to do shoulders, they'll basically tie those grades together and kind of smooth that transition from new pavement.
Hopefully it would be more than, most of them are only like 16 inches wide. Hopefully this would be a little wider than that.
The aprons.
The apron, they're usually, 1 foot to 2 feet wide, but we can take a look at it if it makes sense to bump it out wider. What number did you say you were?
150, well, 156 and 154. We share the driveway.
And they just to clarify, a common misconception that grew out of the paving project at Griswold last summer was and again, part of the reason having this conversation now would have been helpful is that once the paving, once the final paving is done, there's usually a day or two lag between when the crew comes back and is able to put in topsoil and reseed and do all the other things that are required if there are lawns involved. Probably not gonna be a big, not gonna be as much direct intrusion on people's lawns as there would be in a residential setting. But important to know, people were, what do they call the material, the shoulder material? Wrap. So there was wrap everywhere. They're like, oh, it's all over my lawn, blah, blah, blah. And no one really understood that it was gonna come back and be addressed. So we'll try to give we'll try to give necessary updates when needed, whether it's schedule wise. Obviously, I think most of the road crews work regardless of weather unless it's extreme.
Rain on paving days is kind of a,
Right. So, again, there's the road to hell's paved with good intention too, right? So everyone's gonna try to stay on schedule, but we've got sometimes weather doesn't cooperate and may set the schedule back. Yeah,
So I have a similar issue, but I'm not in this stretch,
okay,
so I have to wait till the rest of Skunk Hollow is gonna get any attention, and which is whatever it is, what it is, but that's the only time I'll deal with aprons. Is as part of a full-fledged paving project, right?
typically.
Because I had called, it's just a big drop off there, and every time, I have to slow up, and people are just tailgating, and sometimes I just keep on going, so the hell with it, and then turn around and come back, because they're not gonna slow up.
What number are you at now?
I'm at 71, so I'm not part of this,
Oh, okay,
so,
can look into it though.
but I had already called town. Yes, we, highways, oh, no, you'll have to pay for that, of course, try to get somebody to come in, donate. They don't care, they don't do. It's too small to do. They have any leftover stuff. I put gravel out there right now, just not so it's very loose, so I have to keep breaking it. Because it's an angle and driveway's flat, so this situation.
Yeah.
Whereas it's flat, it's nice and even over here, but not here where I'm coming down, so I'm following from the heading come River Road, hit the top, come down. And
Gotcha.
Yeah.
We can give that a look. So next, I was just gonna share
We have one more
the.
question.
Oh, we
I
gotta go.
had a question, this is going back to a meeting I came to quite a few years ago. Where there was discussion, and evidently planning happening about fixing the intersection of Skunk Hollow and
Oh, yeah.
117.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're starting uphill from that, and that nothing's planned for that.
Nothing planned as stands. Again, that's it's been a target project. Chittenden County Regional Planning is aware of that as being an intersection of interest and
Less
potential.
than ideal situation.
It is, it's less than ideal.
Any direction you're going.
Yeah, and so I can't really give you any indication as to when that'll be rectified, other than to say that, we've been in discussion about it. Tyler talked about the bank erosion that's been happening, which sort of drove the decision to start the paving forward of that. And so, yeah, the assumption being that when that's rectified, potentially we can do all of that work at once, get the repavement up to where it leaves off starting this summer, and get that intersection attended to in the long term.
it makes sense to do the intersection and the slope at the same time. The slope doesn't look bad if you're driving by it 15 or 20 miles if you get down there, it's I think more substantial than probably people realize driving by it.
So you're starting above where all the gravel work was done, or not gravel, rock work was done, near the guardrail.
I'm just trying to think where Adam just did the rock line ditches.
Yeah, well, not the ditch, but on the
Stream
opposite
side where the
the
guardrail.
opposite side of the road, there was a lot of big rock put in where there's guardrail that looks like.
Yes, that section. You can see the guardrail starting
Yeah,
to
it's starting to
lean.
lean.
When you get down to the bottom, you can see that whole thing is the correct way to do those slopes is typically do a good foundation and work your way back up by rebuilding the road. The easy way is to dump rock over the top, which I think what has been done historically. So, but digging down, I think it's all of 20 feet or maybe 25 feet to the brook to really key in and build back up is way more money than we had for this project. So Adam and I talked about at the beginning, it was that little spot alone was going to chew up, not all of the funds, but there'd be nothing left to pave the islands, do the culverts, and it was going to hamstring the rest of this significantly.
One last comment or question that I've wondered about is the fact that when Skunk Hollow was paved from dirt to what it is now, the section that you're repaving now was the last one paved. So it made me wonder why that section has deteriorated faster.
I think when they did that, they didn't have the money to go way down to really dig it out and do a proper job, if you will. So that was kind of,
So that was before my time, but that's
Sure.
pretty common for towns that have gravel roads that then, there's too much traffic or there's too much maintenance for grading that they don't have the funds to do a full depth reconstruction, which is really digging out, 1.5 feet at least, usually 2 feet, putting down roadway fabric and then rebuilding that with all fresh material. That chews up way more money than most towns have to do it, especially for a stretch that long. So a lot of towns, if they feel it's reasonably stable, just pave over top of it.
So that's what's going on here.
So what's gonna happen here? They're gonna rebuild it. And just pave
So
over what's there.
we're with the funds that were available, we're doing that full depth reclamation, which puts a much more solid base. And then 4 inches of pavement on top of that. Adam and I, at our first iteration, we had full depth reconstruction on a lot of this. And I crunched the numbers and it was just not going to happen with the pot of money available. So we tried to pick and choose the worst sections that have broken up the most significant amount, and did a full depth reclamation on those so that we could kind of stretch our dollar further. It's not as good as full depth reconstruction. It's just a heck of a lot cheaper. So we just used our judgment and are making it better, but not perfect, because most towns can't afford to full depth reconstruct miles of roads at a
Do you have
time.
a projection how long this should, because that other, it's kind of deteriorated fast because they never were able to pay for it all.
Yeah,
Where needed, so it should last longer.
it should last longer. I think Adam's ditches will certainly help squeeze, the water doesn't get trapped. Now there's better ditches along some of those stretches. When there's no ditches, the water kind of just can saturate that base, and water is the enemy of roads. So with those ditches, having that water be able to, go somewhere, I think that will help. I think the full depth reclamation will help. Trying to put a time frame on how long a pavement will last without cracking, and I can't do that. But certainly preventative maintenance too, when it does start getting alligator cracks on it, sealing, crack sealing as soon as you can will help. Just like anything, it needs maintenance. Do it the sooner you do it, the longer it's going to last.
Yeah, the town purchased a crack sealing machine last year. So that'll be put to use sometime during the summer and other roads in need. Sabina, I see you have a hand up. You got a question?
Yeah, I have a question. I saw in the lower part of the road where you've already done work that you've dug out the ditches next to the roadway and put in rock. And I was just wondering, there's one particular section in front of the house number 121 where the intersection with Evergreen Lane, the culvert that brings water across underneath Evergreen Lane goes to a ditch that's in front of the house on 121. And when that water flows after or during a rainstorm, the water doesn't continue down in the ditch alongside of the road. It just kind of sweeps over the lawn in front of that house. So I'm just wondering if that needs to be called out in particular, or you're going to be digging out those ditches all the way along the road anyway.
I'm trying to envision the ditch and the culvert in front of 121, but it's kind of escaping me. So that's something I'll have to look at. I've got a note here. I'll have to look at it after this meeting, on my way home or tomorrow or something. I'm not envisioning that specific culvert and the water turning onto the lawn, but I'll have to look at it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's right at the junction below Evergreen Lane and Skunk Hollow Road on the east.
That's not the much larger, like it's like a 4 or 5 foot culvert, or is it a different one than that?
It's a smaller culvert than that.
Smaller culvert. Okay, I'll have to look at it. I don't know off the top of my head. I'll take a look at it.
At
Okay.
that location, there was it washed out part of Skunk Hollow Road during one storm some years ago.
Mm.
Just torn of the water came across there,
I'll take a look. I don't know.
came down this would be the more, the directions right here, sort of the northwestern side of the road, and there's a culvert that cuts over to the other side and actually goes through, directs water, I think, through some of the Ernst property, and then eventually across the back of mine.
Okay.
And that where it went under the road. It tore the road up some years ago.
Okay.
And
I'll take a look. Yeah.
Somewhere there.
What would be your best guess full depth reconstruction versus just milling percentage wise? Along that whole stretch?
Dollars wise?
No, like just amount of work, like there's only 2 or 3 spots of full depth reconstruction, and the rest is just milling.
So that just, so the terms I use, like milling is, just so everyone knows, milling is when they take a grinding machine and grind off usually between a 1/2 inch to 2 inches. That's kind of the shallowest, and that gets rid of some of the junky pavement on top and gets a good surface to bind new pavement to. Reclamation is kind of that same idea of milling, where you're kind of spinning a barrel and grinding it, but instead of just grinding off, you know, 1 inch or 2 inches, you're grinding all of that pavement into some of your gravel subbase and regrading that. And then, so that's reclamation. Reconstruction at full depth is what it sounds like, where you're actually excavating out everything and starting from scratch.
Yeah.
So your question was the percentage difference between milling and full depth reconstruction?
Well, I know, like you mentioned, some of the spots that were rougher shape is getting full depth reconstruction.
Reclamation.
Reclamation,
Yep.
sorry.
That's right. No.
That versus the majority of, it sounds like that's, I don't know, coming around 20% of what we're doing. And the rest
It's
is-
probably really tough to see on this. You can kind of see the center line of road down at 259, where it's got kind of stationing and numbers. It's just a plain center line, where it turns to like a green hatch almost, where it's a wider green band. Can you see that okay? That wider green band area is the full depth reclamation. So it starts in that first inside corner
Okay.
where it's really kind of, you got some good wheel ruts in there. Like White Oak Drive is full depth all the way past the island. And then it gets past the island by like 150 feet and then turns back to mill and pave.
Okay.
Then you get up to Tyler Place, maybe just before Tyler Place.
So these plans actually have that hashed out.
Yes, yeah, so these plans, any of the green, yeah, there's on the left-hand side, you can see Tyler Place, basically full depth reclamation from a couple 100 feet below Tyler Place to maybe 200 or 300 feet above it. And then the last spot is the last island up in near 139.
Okay.
So those, I don't know if percentage wise, I would say 30%.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I haven't flipped through all that.
Yeah, no, good question. Yeah.
And then back to like the junction 117, would that whole project be like a V-Trans thing and not a town project?
The intersection, yeah, that would be a V-Trans thing because it intersects with the state highway. And that would be, yeah, we'd obviously try to get federal dollars. There may be some kind of local match, but that would be the goal.
And I may have missed this, but what was the contract price for this project?
The original contract price came in quite a bit lower than we thought, which was Pike Industries, and they came in at 365 or so. Because they came in quite a bit lower, that Adam and I were shooting for kind of mid to upper 400s, which is kind of where the contractor average was. Because they came in so low, we were able to add an extra maybe 2,000 feet to the project. The original end was at the last island at 139. it's a unit price contract. So they gave the town prices based on tonnage, linear feet of culvert, all these things, and we kind of back calculated with their really good unit prices to extend up to kind of a spot that seemed to make sense with the dollars that were kind of, I call it leftover dollars. So yeah, 364. We're hoping to finish in the mid to upper fours. It's a unit price contract. Sometimes things go a little bit over, sometimes under. You try to get them to wash out at the end.
That's 4 million.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. 400,000.
Oh, really? You can do that? Wow.
Yeah. So I think the original price was
All right, they feel like they're getting their value.
360,000 or so was the original price. We added an extra $100,000 onto that.
Cost them $1 million just to get all their equipment out.
Nah.
Look at that, what they're doing on Route 2.
Oh yeah. Well, the Route 2 job was $20 million for Route 2.
Trucks and all that stuff, you're like, all of them making $100 an hour, you're like, holy.
Yeah, Route 2 is $20 million roughly, and the bridge alone on Route 2 is $20 million. So it's, you get $40 million in that, a couple mile stretch of Route 2, but wow.
And is this is all taxpayer? money
No,
or-
this is actually, this is 50-50-ish.
Roughly.
Who's the-
So
It's all
you,
taxpayer somewhere.
well, it's all taxpayer. So you guys have a grant through V-Trans. They every couple of years, it seems like most towns get a paving grant. Paving and roadway grant that goes to stuff like this, and that's usually, is it $200,000 in this or 175?
I think it's 200.
Right around $200,000, and then the town Adams Fund for capital improvements covers the left,
Of course, I left my glasses on.
Then, if there's V-Trans money in it, all that doing this work, like,
Not like a V-Trans project, where you usually have 3 inspectors all watching them put down pavement at the same time. It's me. So I come by, I work with Pike, I shoot the temperature of pavement to make sure it's not too cold or too hot. Making sure it's the right depth, making sure the culverts are getting aligned correctly. So I'm not there 60 hours a week. I live in Richmond, right, just over the border. And I drive that road almost every day anyway. So it'll be me checking in with them to make sure they're kind of passing muster, meeting the specs. That kind of stuff. Good question.
From a logistics standpoint, what are their hours of working? 6 a.m.
I think the contract has 7 to 6, 7 a.m. to 6. Yeah,
It might detract some.
might. So they are required to keep 1 lane open during construction. That being said, when you have 1 lane closed and 1 lane open, there will be periods where you're stopped by flaggers. It's never 2 minutes. Flaggers never stop you over 2 minutes, especially when you got longer stretches like this. You can expect 10 or 15-minute delays if you time it just wrong. Hopefully maybe that will detract some of the traffic once they get stuck behind a 15-minute flagger once or twice, but people do hustle through there quite a bit. As you guys know better than
Contract, you said 5 contractors bid on this.
4. For bid, I think we invited 5 or 6. Yeah.
So do you vet them? I mean, can you choose or is it completely open?
So the way it's written, and I wrote it, the way it's written is the town doesn't necessarily have to take the lowest bidder. And when the low bidders come in, I basically check to make sure if it's someone I don't know, check their references. With pavers that are big enough to handle this, there's only a couple in the state and they're all pretty good, luckily. We had some not great contractors a couple of years ago and we've asked them to not come back. But the people who bid on this were SD Ireland, Pike, Whitcomb, and Hutchins.
Big boys.
There's besides them, for something this big, not many other people can do it. So you don't need to do as much vetting at the small standalone culvert project for $100,000 where you can get anyone with a excavator who shows up. So
Well, what does one of those paving machines cost?
those paving machines are really expensive. I know that. I couldn't guess, but I'm sure they're approaching $1 million when you start getting to like Pike level paving equipment, where they're GPS operated and thermal sensors and maintaining them. So yeah, I'm sure Pike, when they buy a new paving machine, I'm sure they're spending $500,000, $800,000. But I don't know. I'm not. That's not my side of it particularly. So I'm guessing.
So to circle back to the question about town contribution, if you look in the town report, the general fund budget, I was looking for paving, which is not where it lives. It lives under road improvement. And the town had 295,000 committed to road improvement for this fiscal year. So the outstanding, so the difference between that and the 450-ish would be the state funds that we've received.
What Adam and I tried to do is knowing that you got a $200,000 grant and he had 295 in his budget, so 495 total. We didn't want to bid it out, so it was 495 exactly, because if you get some overages, then we're scrambling for money. So we tried to hit that kind of mid 400 mark, knowing that if something goes a little over or something unforeseen pops up, you got a little cushion in that budget to not run right up to the last nickel.
So would this mean all town's funds go into this road this summer, or do you have like a cachet to fix other parts of?
So depends what you mean by fix. So this is the significant, we talked a little bit before you came, we usually do a significant paving project every summer. Last summer it was Griswold. We actually had some other potential areas, but it turned out that just made sense to put those funds there while the work was happening. So
It makes, from a financial standpoint, so you don't have them leapfrogging around. If you bite off a bigger chunk and they're not mobbing to do 1,000 feet here and then 500 feet here, you get a better bang for your buck. So Adam's been trying to kind of take, like a priority list. He's trying to take a big chunk and do that. And, the next year, the next worst section of road and so on. So.
One other question I'm on Tyler Place.
Yep.
When they're say paving up Skunk Hollow on the right, and they're hitting that stretch across the road. Do we get shut down? Can we not cross new asphalt for 20 minutes or an hour or like?
They'll probably split you in half. The way it's written in the contract is driveways need to maintain access at all times. They might, same thing as a flagger, they might hold you up for 10 or 15 minutes to let it cool a little bit and ask you not to like jam your wheels as you're cranking your turn on it. That stuff happens. It usually scuffs up the surface. Unless you're pulling out some, a big rig right across it or something, but it's good to let it cool. The compactor helps it a little bit too. So it's, you won't be shut into Tyler Place for the day or something. If they just passed it, they might ask you to hold up for a couple minutes and let it cool, just a bit.
I had a question, but I'm not sure if it's appropriate.
Go ahead and try.
All this big money. And that's great. But I'm just kind of wondering, maintenance afterwards. This is a big road with a lot of traffic and wear and tear. And do you guys have any influence as to how the road is maintained afterwards?
I personally don't have any influence on maintenance. That's more of Adam's wheelhouse.
Again, I think it comes, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tyler, I think it comes down to priority. They, again, doing maintenance wise, doing things like crack filling and using tar to try to extend the life of roads before they need to get paved is definitely a priority. And I know Adam pays close attention to which roads in town are needing that kind of attention until their day comes to be repaved.
I just noticed when I come off 117, there's some signage, big trucks over such and such a weight not allowed. Well,
Yeah.
that's the most useless sign because I see huge vehicles, mine being one of them,
And the ethical companies will have their drivers come and get excess weight permits. But again, it's an honor system. We can't really, as everyone knows, we have relatively limited speed control and
I'm just wondering all that, put in these big bucks and people are putting big time, big effort, and this is the other piece. How is it gonna be addressed?
I don't have an answer
Priority,
for
yeah,
you.
it's comes with the territory. The road isn't gonna get used less, I guarantee you that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are many tractor trailers. I've never seen.
I've never seen a tractor
I've
trailer.
never seen
I
one
have.
really-
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
For sure, yeah.
Well-
But I don't see any, I don't see the difference. I'm seeing like an 89, or times you can tell like
Oh.
they're resurfacing, and then all of a sudden that now there's trenches. You
Yeah.
know, I've seen that. I think French Hill, there's, and you had to go over to the right or the left, and then you're right.
You know, it's a well-known and unfortunate circumstance that, you know, we have a number of roads that are commuter roads. And, you know, there's parts of our community that have become pass-throughs for commuters coming off Route 15, Brown's Trace to Governor Peck, Skunk Hollow to get to Williston. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's really an answer there.
You want me to start your chicken soup?
Oh,
No,
it kind of is what it is.
Are you gonna eat right now or?
Maintenance question, I mean, one thing I think that's happening to the road now is that the edges of the pavement are crumbling off.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
have to pick it out of my yard every spring. And I think that happens because there's not maintenance of some sort of fill or gravel to the, you know, from the pavement outward, so that the pavement has some support and doesn't crack off.
Yeah, I can't say in your specific circumstance, but again, I know that backfilling shoulders and doing all that sort of thing is a priority. Usually happens in the shoulder season. So once construction season's over, you know, prior to plowing and winter setting in, those are kind of standard maintenance efforts that happen, whether or not they happen every year in your part of town or in the vicinity of your house. I can't really say, but
As part of this contract, though, they will have a minimum of 1 foot of that wrap backup,
Yeah.
which is much more, it's not as pretty as topsoil and grass growing, but it's much more solid and rigid and provides a nice kind of backup. So on the backside of that wrap, that's where it'll transition from wrap to topsoil, and then they're going to hydro seed it when they're done. It's like the spray on, not just seed and mulch, but hydro seed it.
And Tyler, I think what you explained to me last summer was that the wrap kind of sort of compresses and maintains some
Definitely stick
structure.
to it, yeah.
Unlike unlike
Just
standard gravel or,
Yeah.
you know,
So that
dirt,
should
which
be
had been
better.
used traditionally. So yeah, hopefully yours won't, the shoulders won't erode as quickly.
Actually, the person who can tell you exactly where they all are is the mail lady, at least.
Yes, those mail people, they hold the secret, a lot of town secrets. Let me see, are there any other questions out there? Not seeing any specifically.
I got a question.
Yep.
Hey, this is Lucas, Hertwig live
Oh,
over
hey,
on-
Lucas.
How you doing? I live over on Tyler Place. You may have touched on this earlier. That rock project that Adam did on the corner, kind of towards the bottom of Skunk. How long do you think that will last?
Are you talking about the ditch line or kind of the embankment repair he did?
I think he's talking about the embankment.
Yeah, the embankment with the large stone. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, I'm reading the PDF and it does look like, and again, I think you touched on this before I joined, but you're replacing the guardrail, which is awesome. But I just am curious on how long you think that will last, given the fact that you said the true way of doing it is starting from the bottom up, but obviously you don't have the funds for that. So I was just curious.
Yeah, I don't know how long it will last. It was a section that Adam and I looked at, and it was a pretty weak embankment. And actually, when Adam started to peel it up, a whole section of it kind of just smushed out and let loose on him. I think he ended up putting in something like 10 loads of large, like 2 foot minus stone, and packed it in there with the knuckle of his excavator bucket. So, you know, it's not as good as going to the brook and digging a 4 foot keyway into the brook and building it back up, but I think it will last, be a pretty good patch for the kind of the resources we had available to do that kind of corner little repair.
Yeah.
I think it'll last longer than some other sections in there, which are probably next on the list of sections at the Brookville Road and probably start nipping at the heels of the road.
Sure. Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Lucas.
Do you guys know, was there much vegetation or like trees in that location where he protected the bank?
It had already started to fail. I think there was some smaller, like nothing nothing substantial. You could kind of see it, you could see the direction it was gonna go. So we didn't want to pave it and then have a little bit more let loose and then all of a sudden you get this big, circular crack. And we tried to have it done as early as we could. So if there is, that rock kind of settles out a little bit or finds its own spot, it has time to do that before you put down fresh pavement on top. So I'm not sure it's a perfect fix, but it's what Adam could do with town resources. And like I said, he put in, I think it was 10 loads of type 2, which is like a 2 foot minus stone, which really he said it was really squishy and just kind of packed it in there the best he could with the reach he had. So.
We had a lot of trees come down last week, it's
wind.
not back, we got power outage.
Yeah.
Getting up from. Well, on my side as well. And of course, the tree, there's some gentleman came along and he had his chainsaw and he
John.
did it himself. It's not town.
Oh, I think he was.
Oh, he was?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, I know one of our road crew was contacted by the state police. They got
Oh.
state police got a call from someone in the neighborhood letting them know there was a tree across the road and John deployed to take care of it.
So a lot of stuff's just been thrown over the sides and the branches kind of just that way another way, the remnants of the tree.
Mhm.
That stays there then?
Well,
It's not.
so it's, basically, sort of standard procedure is that while the town is responsible for maintaining the right of way, the trees within that right of way are technically part of the property adjacent to the road. So that kind of falls out of the.
When they come through and do that angle thing where they're not gonna feel, they're gonna have to lift it and go.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they may
I
have,
haven't seen that. I don't know.
they may have a saw with them, but we ran into this last summer.
The mowers that we hire to mow the roadside,
Yeah,
and they're not able to mow when there's all that debris
Yeah.
in the way.
Big stuff.
Yeah, there's big stuff. I mean, there's some that if car went off the road, have trees going through your head.
you know anyone who needs free firewood?
That's actually.
Front Porch Farm.
Front
Actually, you
Porch
know who
Farm.
you could call? Wood for Good.
Oh,
Eric,
that's a good
yeah.
point. That's good.
Eric might be interested. Yeah, we have a really fortunate resource in them. They're willing to scavenge just about anything that people aren't interested in. So if there aren't any more questions from folks online, I wanted to conclude by thanking everyone in advance for their patience. Again, being relatively new in my role, I've learned a lot about the value of communication and clarity and trying to demystify the processes around road repair, paving, can create some concern, obviously, anxiety, little bit of inconvenience. So everyone's patience is welcomed. And the other thing I would say is if you have any questions or concerns while work is in process, please contact me and don't confront road workers or people who have no ability to really make bigger decisions or have deeper discussions about things that you may consider aren't being handled appropriately. We learned some lessons about that last summer as well. They're expensive. A conversation with me is cheap in comparison. So the less interruption, the faster the job gets done, and the sooner we'll all be able to be back on your road. And I think if it wasn't, if you haven't been following, there had been it's been ongoing discussion, obviously, about speeding and speed control. There is going to be, upon conclusion of this particular project, any of the speed bumps, all the painting and lining is going to be redone. And I think we looked into into having ground, what do you call the arrows as you approach the speed bumps, Tyler?
I don't know, they call them arrows, I don't.
Arrows.
There's space further. across.
Yeah, basically,
Yeah.
letting you know that you need to slow down as you approach a speed bump. You know, we'd had some conversation about actually having those arrows ground so that there would be depressed surface. And they'd be less likely to, you know, the paint would be less likely to fade over time. And there'd be a little bit of a, like a tactile.
Rumble strip.
Right, exactly, more
Across
like
the
a,
middle of the road.
more like a rumble strip kind
Yeah.
of thing, so as you approach them, so, you know, there are some low hanging fruit things that we are trying to do to, help enhance speed control on your road. Again, it's tough with a community corridor. Yeah, the rumble strip.
That'll be there.
Oh, I don't know. Oh, no, not for the center line, correct?
Correct.
So I also have, I brought cards if people want to know how to contact me if anything, they have questions as the project comes up, feel free to grab one of those on the way out, and we will again, we'll post as we get closer. We'll try to communicate via Front Porch Forum and any information that's appropriate to catalog for consumption on the highway department site. We'll be sure to do that.
Great.
Thanks. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, everyone. Appreciate your time.
You took a note about 7, we need to scratch that because I've masked it.
Oh, okay.
now, and
Oh, great.
I know this town's not gonna do it. So I'll just wait till the next half, the other half of the.